Marcus Chen moved his salvage ship slowly through the floating wreckage. 3 months had passed since pirates attacked Kepler Station, but pieces of the destroyed station still drifted in space like metal ghosts. His scanner beeped softly as it found valuable materials among the twisted metal and broken glass. He had been working salvage for 10 years now. It was not glamorous work, but it paid well enough. Most people did not want to dig through the remains of disasters. They found it too sad or too dangerous. Marcus did not mind. Someone had to clean up these messes, and the work helped him stay busy. Staying busy meant less time to think about things he wanted to forget. His ship's computer, Sarah, spoke in her calm electronic voice. Small energy signature, detected. Sector 7. It appears to be artificial in origin. Marcus steered toward the signal. Between 2 large chunks of station hull, something glowed with a soft blue light. As he got closer, he could see it was a weapon of some kind. It looked like a sword, but unlike any sword he had ever seen. The blade was made of crystal that seemed to have light flowing through it like water. Strange symbols were carved along its edge, pulsing gently with the same blue glow. Sarah, scan that weapon. What can you tell me about it? The computer hummed as it analyzed the object. The weapon appears to be of Veltar origin. Based on the design patterns and energy readings, it is likely a ceremonial blade of high importance. Estimated value: 200,000 credits, minimum. Marcus whistled softly. That was more money than he made in 2 years. But something about the sword made him hesitate. He had dealt with alien artifacts before, and the valuable ones were usually dangerous. The Veltar were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors with strange mystical beliefs. Their weapons were said to be more than just tools. He extended his ship's mechanical arm and carefully grasped the sword. The moment the metal fingers touched the crystal blade, alarms started ringing in his cabin. "Warning," Sarah announced. "Energy feedback detected. The weapon is attempting to interface with the collection mechanism." Interface? What does that mean? Unknown. I recommend immediate release of the object. But Marcus was curious now. He brought the sword into his ship's cargo hold and put on his environmental suit. When he opened the cargo bay doors, the sword was floating in the middle of the room, still glowing softly. He reached out with a gloved hand to touch it. Pain exploded through his arm the instant his fingers made contact. It felt like electricity and fire at the same time, racing from his hand, up through his shoulder, and into his chest. He jerked his hand back, gasping inside his helmet. "Marcus, your vital signs show extreme stress. What happened?" He stared at the sword, which continued to float peacefully as if nothing had occurred. "The thing shocked me. But not with electricity. Something else." Despite the pain, Marcus found himself drawn to the weapon. He had felt many kinds of pain during his years as a soldier. But this was different. It did not feel random or accidental. The sword had tested him somehow, and he had failed. Back in his cabin, Marcus researched everything he could find about Veltar weapons. What he learned made him forget all about the sword's value. According to the galactic databases, the Veltar believed their weapons contained pieces of their souls. When a warrior lost their weapon, they were exiled from their people forever. They could not return home, could not serve in their military, could not even speak to other Veltar. The records showed that a Veltar ship had been destroyed during the Kepler Station attack. Only one survivor had been found, a female warrior priestess named Zarthea. She was currently living on Nexus Prime Station, working as a mercenary in the criminal underground. The files described her as dishonored and exiled due to loss of ceremonial weapon during combat. Marcus stared at the information on his screen. This Zarthea had lost everything because her sword was destroyed. Except it had not been destroyed. It was sitting in his cargo hold, probably worth more to her than all the money in the galaxy. He tried to contact her directly, but the communication channels to Nexus Prime's lower levels were heavily encrypted. The criminal organizations that ran those sectors did not like outsiders asking questions. Marcus would have to go there in person. Sarah, set course for Nexus Prime. Best possible speed. May I ask why we are abandoning a profitable salvage operation to visit one of the most dangerous stations in this sector? Marcus looked at the sword floating in his cargo hold through the internal camera. Even through the display screen, it seemed to be watching him. Because someone lost something important, and we found it. The logical course would be to sell the weapon and transfer the credits to the owner. It does not work that way with these people. The sword has to be returned properly, by hand, with the right words spoken. It is about honor. I do not understand human concepts of honor. Marcus started the ship's engines and felt the familiar push of acceleration. 3 days to Nexus Prime. 3 days to figure out how he was going to return a weapon that hurt him just to touch it. Sometimes I do not understand them either, Sarah. But that does not mean we should ignore them. As his ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, Marcus wondered what kind of person this Zarthia was, and whether she would even want her sword back. Exile was sometimes easier than facing the responsibilities that came with honor. He had learned that lesson himself, years ago. But that was exactly why he had to try. Nexus Prime was exactly as ugly as Marcus remembered. The massive space station hung in the void between 3 star systems, serving as a hub for traders, criminals, and anyone else who wanted to avoid government attention. The upper levels housed legitimate businesses and wealthy merchants. The lower levels were home to smugglers, pirates, and people who had nowhere else to go. Marcus docked his ship in the middle sections and made his way down through the crowded corridors. The air grew thicker and more stale as he descended. Neon signs advertised services in a dozen different alien languages. The smell of cooking food mixed with industrial chemicals and unwashed bodies. He had spent 2 days asking questions and following leads. Zarthia was not hard to find once he knew where to look. Everyone in the criminal underground knew about the exiled Veltar warrior. She worked as muscle for hire, taking jobs that were too dangerous or too dirty for most people to handle. Marcus found her in a bar called The Broken Chain, 3 levels below the main marketplace. The establishment catered to aliens who wanted to drink away their troubles. The lighting was dim, and the air recyclers worked poorly. Most of the customers sat alone at small tables, avoiding eye contact with each other. Zarthia sat in the far corner, her back to the wall. Marcus recognized her immediately from the photos in his research files, but she looked very different now. Veltar were usually proud of their appearance. Their scales were kept polished and bright, and they wore their ceremonial markings with dignity. This Veltar looked like she had given up caring about such things. Her scales were dull gray instead of the bright silver they should have been. The ceremonial tattoos on her arms had faded until they were barely visible. She wore simple work clothes instead of the elaborate armor her people preferred. When she lifted her drink, Marcus could see scars on her hands that had not been treated properly. He approached her table slowly, keeping his hands visible. Veltar could be dangerous when startled, especially ones with nothing left to lose. Zarthia of the Third Temple, he asked quietly. She looked up at him with eyes that seemed very tired. That name belongs to someone who died 3 months ago. I am just Thea now. What do you want, human? My name is Marcus Chen. I am a salvage operator. I found something that belonged to you. Her expression did not change. I have no possessions worth salvaging. You have the wrong person. Marcus sat down across from her without being invited. I found your soul blade. The glass in her hand cracked. Alcohol leaked across the table, but she did not seem to notice. For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then, she began to laugh. It was not a happy sound. My soul blade was destroyed when my ship exploded. I watched it happen from an escape pod. You are either lying or insane. It was floating in the wreckage of Kepler Station. Crystal blade, about 3 feet long, glows blue. Has symbols carved along the edge that pulse with light. She stopped laughing. Describe the symbols. Marcus pulled out his tablet and showed her the photos he had taken. Zarthia stared at the images for almost a full minute without speaking. It survived, she whispered finally. My soul blade survived. I want to return it to you. She shook her head violently. Impossible. You could not have handled it long enough to bring it here. Soul blades reject the unworthy. The pain alone would have killed you. It hurt, Marcus admitted. But I managed. You managed? Her voice rose, causing other customers to look in their direction. She lowered it again quickly. Human? A soul blade tests the soul of anyone who touches it. If you are not worthy, it burns you from the inside. The pain increases every second you hold it until your heart stops beating. No one, except the bonded warrior, can handle one for more than a few moments. How long is a few moments? 10 seconds, maybe 15 for someone very strong. After that, you die. Marcus thought about his trip to Nexus Prime. He had handled the sword for much longer than that while moving it from his cargo hold to a secure container. The pain had been terrible, but it had not killed him. Why do you want to return it? Zarthia asked. You could sell it for enough money to buy a fleet of ships. Because it belongs to you. Because you were exiled when you lost it, and maybe getting it back will let you go home. She stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. You would risk death to restore the honor of a stranger? An alien stranger? There. Yes. Why? Marcus thought about how to explain it. Because everyone deserves a chance to make things right. Because I know what it feels like to be cut off from the life you used to have. Zarthia was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was very soft. Even if you could return my soul blade to me, it would not matter. I am exiled. My name has been struck from the temple records. My family pretends I never existed. Having the blade back will not change that. Are you sure? The only way an exiled warrior can return is through the rite of redemption. But that requires... She paused. It requires the blade to accept that the warrior's exile was unjust. The blade must choose to forgive. And you do not think it will? I lost it during battle. I failed to protect it. Why would it forgive that? Marcus leaned forward. Maybe because you did not really lose it. Maybe because it was never destroyed. And also, 17 Reese. Just misplaced. Maybe because you have suffered enough for a mistake that was not entirely your fault. She looked at him with something that might have been hope. If hope could be mixed with fear. Where is the blade now? On my ship. I can bring it here, but you should know that handling it causes me considerable pain. I may need help getting it to you. If the blade kills you during the transfer, I will never forgive myself. Then I guess I had better not die. Zarthia finished her drink and stood up. There are others like me here. Exiles from various species. They will want to witness this, if you are serious. Some will not believe a human can survive contact with a soul blade long enough to return it. Let them watch. When should we do this? Tomorrow night, Cargo Bay 7 on the Outer Ring. It is abandoned, so we will not be disturbed. Marcus nodded and stood to leave. As he walked toward the door, Zarthia called after him. Human, Marcus. If this kills you, know that the attempt alone has given me more hope than I have felt in months. He looked back at her. If it kills me, make sure someone knows I tried to do the right thing. That is all any of us can really hope for. Marcus spent the morning preparing for what might be his last day alive. He updated his will, sent messages to the few people who would care if he died, and made sure his ship's maintenance logs were current. If someone else had to take over his salvage business, they would need proper records. The sword waited in its containment unit in the cargo hold. Through the transparent aluminum walls, he could see it floating in the center of the chamber, glowing softly. It looked peaceful, almost beautiful. It was hard to believe something so elegant could cause such terrible pain. Sarah, run a full diagnostic on my environmental suit. I want every system checked twice. Diagnostic complete. All systems functioning normally. Marcus, I have been analyzing the energy readings from the weapon. The patterns suggest it is not simply causing pain through physical means. What do you mean? The energy signature resembles neural interface technology, but far more advanced than anything in our databases. I believe the weapon is testing your mind and spirit, not just your body. Physical protection may not help. Marcus had suspected as much. The pain he felt when touching the sword was unlike anything he had experienced as a soldier. Burns, broken bones, even laser wounds had a different quality to them. This felt like the weapon was looking inside him and finding him lacking. Can you monitor my vital signs during the transfer? Yes. But if the weapon decides to kill you, I will not be able to intervene quickly enough to save your life. I know. Just keep recording everything. Maybe the data will help someone else understand how these things work. Marcus opened the containment unit and reached inside. The moment his gloved fingers touched the crystal blade, fire raced up his arm. He had expected it this time, but knowing pain was coming did not make it easier to bear. His suit's medical systems immediately began injecting him with painkillers, but they seemed to have no effect. He lifted the sword carefully and began walking toward the cargo bay exit. Each step sent new waves of agony through his nervous system. By the time he reached the door, sweat was pouring down his face inside his helmet. Heart rate at 140 beats per minute, Sarah reported. Blood pressure elevated. Stress hormones at dangerous levels. How long have I been holding it? 47 seconds. Already longer than Zarthia had said was possible. Marcus wondered why he was still alive. Maybe humans were more resistant to the sword's effects than other species. Maybe his years of military training had taught him to function despite pain. Or maybe he was just too stubborn to die. He made his way through the station corridors toward the outer ring. Other people gave him a wide berth. Something about the way he moved must have warned them that he was dangerous to be near. The sword grew heavier with each step, though its actual weight had not changed. Marcus, I am detecting unusual neural activity in your brain. The weapon appears to be accessing your memories. That explained the flashes of images that kept appearing in his vision. He saw his old military unit, the friends he had lost to alien raiders 5 years ago. He saw his parents' faces, disappointed that their son had become a drifter instead of settling down. He saw every mistake he had ever made, every person he had failed to save. The sword was reading his history, judging whether he was worthy to carry it. Marcus did not feel worthy. He had made plenty of mistakes in his life. But worthiness was not the point. The point was doing what needed to be done, regardless of whether you deserved the privilege. 2 minutes, 15 seconds, Sarah announced. Your body is beginning to shut down non-essential functions. The corridor seemed to stretch on forever. Each doorway looked identical to the last. Marcus began to worry that he was walking in circles, that the pain was affecting his sense of direction. Then he saw the sign for Cargo Bay 7 and almost cried with relief. The bay was exactly as Zarthia had described it. Abandoned, poorly lit, with just enough space for a small group to gather. She was already there, along with 3 other aliens Marcus did not recognize. They all stared at him as he entered, their expressions ranging from amazement to disbelief. He is actually carrying it, one of them whispered. Impossible, said another. Humans do not have the spiritual strength to handle a soul blade. Marcus ignored them and focused on Zarthia. She looked different than she had in the bar. Her scales had been polished, and she wore clean clothes. There was hope in her eyes, but also fear. How long have you been holding it? She asked. About 4 minutes. The other aliens exchanged looks of shock. 4 minutes was apparently a very long time in their world. The pain, Zarthia said. How do you bear it? Marcus tried to think of how to explain. The pain was still there, still growing stronger with each passing second. It felt like being burned alive from the inside. But he had learned long ago that pain was just information. It told you that something was wrong, but it did not have to control your actions. I think about why I am doing this, he said through gritted teeth. I think about you, sitting in that bar, believing your life is over. I think about honor and second chances, and the fact that everyone deserves to go home, eventually. Even humans, especially humans. We are very good at finding our way back to where we belong. The sword was getting hotter in his hands. Through his gloves, he could feel the crystal warming like metal left in sunlight. His suit's cooling systems were working at maximum capacity, but they were losing the battle. 5 minutes. 30 seconds. Sarah's voice crackled in his earpiece. Multiple organ systems showing signs of failure. Marcus took a step toward Zarthia, then another. The simple act of walking required enormous effort now. His legs felt like they were made of lead, and his vision was starting to blur around the edges. I can see the blade accepting you, Zarthia said in wonder. The light is changing. It knows you are worthy. Endwa. Marcus could not see any change in the light, but he trusted her expertise. He took another step forward and extended the sword toward her. I return what was lost, he said, remembering the formal words from his research. His voice came out as barely more than a whisper. May honor be restored. The distance between them seemed enormous. 3 more steps, 2 more steps, 1 more step. Marcus reached the limit of his endurance just as Zarthia reached for her blade. The pain peaked at a level that his brain simply could not process. His knees buckled, and he began to fall. But he did not let go of the sword. Time seemed to slow as Marcus fell toward the metal floor of the cargo bay. The sword in his hands blazed with light so bright it hurt to look at directly. Every nerve in his body screamed in protest, but he kept his grip firm on the crystal blade. Zarthia moved faster than he had ever seen anyone move. Her hand shot out and grasped the sword's handle just above his own hands. The moment her fingers made contact with the weapon, everything changed. The burning sensation that had been consuming Marcus for the past 6 minutes vanished instantly, as if someone had thrown a switch. The sword's harsh white light softened to a warm golden glow. The weight that had been crushing down on him lifted, and he could breathe again. But something else was happening. Where Zarthia's hand touched the sword, ripples of pure light were spreading outward like drops of water hitting a still pond. The light traveled up her arm, across her shoulders, and over her entire body. As it passed, her dull gray scales transformed back to brilliant silver. The faded tattoos on her arms darkened and took on their original deep blue color. Marcus found himself kneeling on the floor, still holding the lower part of the sword's handle. Zarthia was also on her knees, but for a different reason. Tears were streaming down her face as she stared at the weapon that had been lost to her for so many months. It remembers me, she whispered. After all this time, it still knows who I am. The 3 alien witnesses stood in stunned silence. Marcus could see the shock on their faces as they watched the transformation taking place. One of them, a tall creature with insect-like features, began speaking rapidly in a language Marcus did not understand. He says this is impossible. Zarthia translated without looking away from her sword. He says no non-Veltar has ever been able to hold a soul blade for more than a few seconds. He wants to know what kind of human you are. Marcus managed to stand up, though his legs were still shaky. Just a regular one, I think. There is nothing regular about what you just did. Zarthia finally looked at him, and he could see that her eyes had changed too. They were brighter now, more alive. The blade tested you for 6 minutes and 43 seconds. That is longer than some Veltar warriors can manage with their own weapons. It was not easy. It should have been impossible. She stood gracefully, the sword held in both hands like the sacred object it was. A soul blade does not just test physical endurance. It looks into your heart, your memories, your deepest motivations. It judges whether you are worthy to carry it, even temporarily. Marcus rubbed his hands where they had gripped the sword. The pain was completely gone, but he could still feel ghost sensations where the weapon had burned him. What did it see in me? I do not know, but whatever it found, the blade approved. Look. She held the sword up toward the overhead lights. Along the crystal blade, new symbols had appeared alongside the original carvings. They glowed with a soft blue light, pulsing in rhythm with Zarthia's heartbeat. These symbols record the blade's history, she explained. Every important moment in its existence is marked here. This new one. She traced one of the glowing marks with her finger. This records your deed. You are now part of the sword's legend. One of the witnesses, a being that looked like a cross between a lizard and a tree, stepped forward and spoke in accented standard. I have never seen a soul blade except a foreign touch like this. The stories will spread quickly. Every exile in this sector will hear what happened here, tonight. Good, Zarthia said firmly. Let them hear. Let them know that honor can be restored, that exile does not have to be permanent. She turned back to Marcus. There is more. The blade's acceptance of you means something in our culture. It means you are recognized as worthy of the flame. No human has ever received this recognition before. What does that mean, practically speaking? It means you have the respect of every Veltar warrior in the galaxy. It means our High Council will have to acknowledge what you have done. It means... She paused, as if trying to find the right words. It means you have changed things in ways you cannot yet understand. Marcus felt suddenly tired. The adrenaline that had kept him going through the ordeal was wearing off, and the full impact of what he had endured was hitting him. I just wanted to return your sword, and in doing so, you have given me back my life. Zarthia bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect among her people. I can perform the rite of redemption now. The blade's acceptance of your sacrifice proves that my exile was not justified by dishonor, but by circumstance beyond my control. So you can go home? Yes. But more than that, I can serve again. I can be who I was meant to be. No. The insect-like witness spoke again, and Zarthia nodded. He asks if you understand the significance of what you have accomplished. Among his people, there are legends about other species who might one day prove themselves worthy of joining the ancient alliances. Tonight, you have taken the first step toward making those legends reality. Marcus looked around the cargo bay at the assembled aliens. They were all staring at him with expressions he had never seen directed at a human before. Not fear, not suspicion, not even simple respect. Something deeper. Something like reverence. I think you are all making too big a deal of this, he said finally. I found something that belonged to someone else, and I gave it back. That is basic human behavior. Exactly, said the tree-like being. That is what makes it so remarkable. Zarthia carefully sheathed her sword in a scabbard that had appeared at her side, seemingly from nowhere. The weapon's glow faded to a dim pulse that could barely be seen through the crystal sheath. Marcus Chen, she said formally. You have done more than return my blade. You have restored my honor, given me back my future, and proven that humans possess a nobility that transcends species boundaries. How can I ever repay this debt? Marcus thought about it for a moment. Just make good use of your second chance. Help other people when you can. Do not let what happened to you happen to anyone else if you have the power to prevent it. You ask for nothing for yourself? I have what I need. A working ship, honest work, and the knowledge that I did the right thing when it mattered. That is enough. Zarthia smiled, and for the first time since he had met her, She looked truly happy. You are wrong about one thing, Marcus Chen. You are not a regular human at all. As they left the cargo bay together, Marcus wondered what kind of complications his simple act of decency was going to create. He had a feeling his quiet life as a salvage operator was about to become much more interesting. 2 weeks after the sword ceremony, Marcus was trying to repair a damaged cargo scanner when Sarah interrupted his work with an urgent alert. Marcus, we are receiving a priority communication from the Veltar High Council. The message is being transmitted on diplomatic channels with full governmental authority. Marcus put down his tools and stared at the communication panel. In all his years of salvage work, he had never received official messages from any government, much less one of the galaxy's most powerful military alliances. Are you sure they want to talk to me? The message specifically requests communication with Marcus Chen, salvage operator, registered owner of vessel Second Chance. That appears to be you. Marcus activated the communication system. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what looked like a massive ceremonial hall. Dozens of Veltar warriors in elaborate armor stood in formation around a central platform. At the center sat an elderly Veltar female, wearing robes that seemed to be made of woven light. Marcus Chen, of the vessel Second Chance. She spoke in accented but clear standard. I am High Counselor Vel Nara of the Third Throne. We have received reports of recent events involving you and warrior priestess Zarthea. Yes, ma'am. I returned her sword to her. So, we have been told. These reports seemed impossible at first. No non-Veltar has ever successfully handled a soul blade for more than moments. Yet multiple witnesses confirm that you carried Zarthea's blade for nearly 7 minutes. Marcus was not sure what he was supposed to say to that. It was not easy. I imagine not. Are you aware that warrior priestess Zarthea has successfully completed the rite of redemption? She has been restored to full honor and will resume her duties as a temple guardian. I am glad to hear that. The High Counselor leaned forward slightly. The blade's acceptance of your sacrifice has been interpreted by our priests as a sign of great significance. In our history, only 3 non-Veltar have ever been recognized as worthy of the flame. All 3 became legendary figures whose deeds are still celebrated centuries later. Marcus felt a knot forming in his stomach. He had hoped this whole affair would blow over quietly. I just returned something that belonged to her. Yes. That is what makes your actions so remarkable. The High Counselor stood and gestured to the assembled warriors. These are the finest fighters our people have produced. They have spent their lives training for combat, studying ancient traditions, and proving their worthiness through countless trials. Yet none of them would have endured what you endured for a stranger. Maybe they just never had the chance. Perhaps. But the blade chose to accept you, Marcus Chen. It judged your character and found you worthy of its respect. That judgment carries weight beyond your understanding. The High Counselor paused and looked directly at him through the screen. I am authorized to offer you full diplomatic recognition as an honor-sworn ally of the Veltar people. This designation has been granted to only 12 individuals in our recorded history. It would give you access to our territories, protection under our laws, and the right to speak for humanity in certain matters of interspecies cooperation. Marcus almost choked. Ma'am, I think there has been some kind of mistake. I am just a salvage operator. I have no authority to represent humanity. You represented humanity perfectly when you chose to endure agony for the sake of another's honor. That choice has already begun to change how we view your species. Sarah's voice spoke quietly in the background. Marcus, I am detecting similar communications being transmitted to Earth's colonial administration and the United Worlds Council. It appears this conversation is being recorded for official purposes. Great. Now the human governments were going to get involved. Marcus could already imagine the meetings, the interviews, the requests for him to explain exactly what he had done and why. His quiet life was definitely over. High Counselor, I appreciate the honor you are offering, but I am not sure I am the right person for this kind of responsibility. The sword believed you were the right person. That is sufficient for us. Before Marcus could respond, another voice joined the conversation. Zarthia appeared at the edge of the screen, now wearing the full ceremonial armor of a warrior priestess. She looked magnificent. Every inch. The noble warrior she had been born to be. Marcus, she said warmly, I wanted to personally thank you again for what you did. The High Council has asked me to serve as cultural liaison for this new relationship between our peoples. I hope we will work together often, in the coming years. Zarthia, you look. Marcus searched for words. You look like yourself again. I am myself again, thanks to you. The temple has welcomed me back with full honors. My family has acknowledged me once more. I have been given command of a new ship and crew. She smiled. All because a human stranger thought everyone deserved a second chance. The High Counselor spoke again. We have also received interesting reports from other species. It seems word of your deed has spread beyond our people. The Thrakari Confederacy has expressed interest in opening formal discussions with humanity. The Ancient Assembly has requested information about human ethical systems. Even the reclusive Void Dwellers have sent observers to monitor human activities. Marcus rubbed his forehead. This was getting out of control very quickly. All because I returned a lost sword? All because of how you returned it, and why, Zarthia corrected. Your action demonstrated something that many species have theorized about but never seen proven. That humans possess an innate moral compass that transcends cultural boundaries. You risked your life for the honor of an alien stranger because it was simply the right thing to do. Any decent person would have done the same thing. That, said the High Counselor, is exactly our point. If what you call basic human decency can produce such remarkable results, then perhaps humanity is ready to take its place among the galaxy's elder civilizations. The communication ended shortly after that, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and a dozen new problems. Within hours, his ship's communication system was flooded with messages from news organizations, government officials, and curious individuals who wanted to hear his story firsthand. He ignored most of them and focused on his work. There was still salvage to collect, equipment to repair, and a living to make. The galaxy might be ready to treat humans differently, but Marcus still had bills to pay. 3 days later, while sorting through a debris field near the outer rim, he received a simple text message from an unknown sender. My name is Kethvar. I am an exile from the Rigelian Empire. I have heard what you did for the Veltar warrior. I have something that belongs to my people, but I cannot return it myself. Can you help? Marcus stared at the message for a long time. He could already imagine the pain, the danger, and the complications that would come from getting involved. He thought about his comfortable, quiet life and how much easier it would be to just delete the message and pretend he had never received it. Instead, he typed back, "Send me the details. I will see what I can do." Dud. Dud. After all, everyone deserved a chance to go home. As his ship changed course toward the coordinates Kethvar had provided, Marcus reflected on how strange his life had become. He had always thought of himself as an ordinary person who happened to do salvage work. Now, apparently, he was some kind of interspecies diplomat whose basic human decency was reshaping galactic politics. Sarah, what do you think about all this? I think you are going to have a very interesting career, Marcus Chen. I also think the galaxy is lucky to have humans like you in it. Marcus smiled and settled back in his pilot's chair. Maybe being extraordinary was not about having special powers or abilities. Maybe it was just about doing the right thing, even when it hurt, especially when no one was watching. The stars stretched out ahead of him, full of possibilities he had never imagined. Somewhere among them, other people were waiting for second chances, for someone to care enough to help them find their way home. He was happy to be that someone.